Hello there. My name's Alicia and I'm a content creator. Today I'm going to share with you my experience as both a freelancer and someone who's worked at an agency in case you're struggling with which path to take as a creator. Okay, we're going to jump right into it. The first thing I want to talk about is autonomy. So, as a freelancer, you have full autonomy over everything. What jobs you take, how many jobs you take, what kind of content you create, what products you work with. If something doesn't work for you, you literally can just say no. If someone reaches out and says, hey, I'd love for you to work with this meat brand, but you're vegetarian, you can just say no. If someone reaches out to you and says, hey, I want you to work with this law firm and you don't like working with legal products, then you can just say no. So the beauty of freelancing is that the world is your oyster and you can say yes and no to whatever you want, and it's up to you. When you work in corporate, you are assigned a client or multiple clients, and so you don't have a choice in the matter. Content, you definitely have some more flexibility. It also depends on your agency or on the brand that you're working with because it's can vary. But in general, freelancing, you just have full autonomy over everything. So if you are the type of person that likes to have full control over your workload, full control over your craft, then freelancing is for you. If you're someone who needs a little bit of guidance, who likes having strict boundaries and strict guidelines, if you're someone who loves working with a very strong brand image, then corporate is definitely for you. The next thing I want to talk about is structure. So freelancing, man, is that hard if you are type B. And guess who's type B? I'm type B. I really struggle with being organized. I really struggle with having a schedule. I have never been like a 5 a.m. morning type of person, but if you are a freelancer, that is very beneficial for you. It's not necessary, but it's very helpful if you are able to schedule your days and stick to that schedule, especially when it comes to deadlines, when it comes to not having time blindness and recognizing like, okay, I have this many deliverables that are due by Thursday and I have, 34 hours to do it. How am I going to break up these 34 hours and how am I going to knock all these things out? I personally have time blindness, so that was something that I always struggled with and regularly was like, hey, can we extend the deadline? Or like, I know I said I was going to get it to you by Friday, but can I get it to you by Monday? You can work with that. As a freelancer, you do have a little bit more flexibility as long as you communicate and let them know early, like, hey, I know I said I was going to get it to you by tomorrow, but I've run into, I've had a scheduling issue. I had something come up. It's taking me a little bit longer to edit, whatever. As long as you let them know, they're usually pretty chill about it. But it definitely, if you are not really strict with yourself, if you are not good with sticking to the things that you say you're going to do, sticking to your to-do list, it's really easy to fall off and things just become very chaotic and in disarray. I kind of fluctuate where I'll have a week or two where I'm feeling really productive and I'm doing really good, and then I'll kind of fall off and I'll need a little bit of time, or like the weather will be terrible and then I'm feeling terrible and I don't feel like filming that day. And the beauty of freelancing is that you don't have to if you don't want to. But that's a little bit of a dangerous, slippery slope because then accountability becomes more difficult. The benefits to working a corporate job or working at an agency is that you have all of these set deadlines and you have a team that holds you accountable. And you also have multiple people covering different facets of the work. So you don't necessarily have to worry about the ins and outs depending on the structure of where you work. But you have someone that's following up on those deadlines. You have someone that's following up and making sure you got the products you need. You have someone that's following up and is like, hey, do you need help with editing, or do you need this content piece or this B-roll? So that is really beneficial. If you are someone that struggles with scheduling and organizing yourself and like keeping to a strict schedule, corporate or agency life might be for you because that's already built in. The structure and the foundation are already there and you don't have to build it yourself. Alternatively, you are limited, and so if you need an extension, it's probably harder to get one. If you are not able to finish your work by Friday, but you work in an agency, there's no excuse for that. You might have to stay up late the night before just to get it in by Friday. Whereas if you're freelancing, you can't get in by Friday, you ask for an extra day, it's fine. So it really depends on what works for you. All of these tips are going to be very personality specific because there's no one solution or one choice that works for everyone. It just depends on what type of person you are. So the next thing we're going to talk about is work politics. So work politics, again, freelancing, you don't have to deal with none of that. I think the worst thing that you'll have to deal with in freelancing is pay discrepancies and delayed payment. So, most of the brands or most of the agencies or most of the clients I've worked with are pretty good about paying me within a reasonable amount of time. It's usually like 2 weeks to a month. Occasionally, you'll get the ones. I had one that took like a month and a half, maybe 2 months, because they were starting a new system. And the person I was in contact with kept apologizing and was like, I'm so sorry. We're going to send you free products because I know this has been annoying. And I was like, thank you so much. This has been a very long time for me to receive payment. So, in that regard, if there is a difficult dynamic, or if you start communicating with a brand or an agency and you're like, I don't really like your tone, or I don't really like your energy, or I don't really like the way you guys run things, you run a tight ship, or maybe your ask is too much, the script itself I don't really vibe with because it's a little bit cheesy, it's not something I would say, maybe it's a little bit harmful in its verbiage. I've definitely turned down jobs or products where I'm like, I don't want to promote this, I don't like the way that you're promoting it, I don't like the way that you're talking about it. I had one that they essentially were like body shaming, and I was like, I don't want to talk about that and I don't want to promote that. If there's something you don't like about something, whether it's work politics, personality, ask, whatever, you can just say no. So that's the beauty of freelance. When it comes to an agency or working in corporate, that obviously you are very limited. It depends on your resources. It depends on your support system. As a person of color, if there's a DEI department, that obviously is going to be very helpful and going to be a great resource. If there is a DEI department, I always recommend or suggest, and I do this myself, always get in contact with them immediately. Just make your presence known, introduce yourself, say hi. Literally doesn't have to be for any reason other than like, hey, I just want you to know who I am. I want to know who you are. And then if I ever have need of your support, like I'm going to come to you, or I can come to you. If your company doesn't have a DEI team, which I feel like at this point most places do, but if they don't, make sure you immediately seek out or try to figure out where your allies are and the people that you can lean on if anything happens, even anything that's not racial, but or gender-based or discriminatory in any sense. Even if it's just like you're dealing with a difficult personality or you're frustrated about something that isn't specific to an ism, finding that support system and building that support system early is essential, because then, as a freelancer, you can say no. In corporate, you can't say no, but you can kind of work your way around it and you can have people that can back you up. So, and hopefully it can also get better. If it's something that you address and you have a conversation with that person and you have to work with that person, then maybe it's something you can address and they can work on, or you can work on together and find a common middle ground. So that's something to consider in both of those areas. Again, it's very environment specific. Some places are just really not progressive. Other places have done a really good job of having a DEI department, making sure that they enforce non-discriminatory practices. So very specific, and that's something that also you should ask a lot of questions about when you are interviewing for a job and when you are researching the company, because a lot of that you can kind of see on their LinkedIn or on their website or in their content. You can kind of see like where they stand with things or get a general sense of it. You obviously never know until you're actually there, but that obviously is just essential to your happiness in the workplace. So the last thing I'm going to touch on is work-life balance. I feel like there is a very common misconception that freelancers are working 2 hours a day and then just chilling the rest of the day, or they're filming their little YouTube videos and then they're going to get their matcha and going to Pilates and this and that. And it is very much so the opposite. The opposite of that, if you are a freelancer, you are probably working over 40 hours a week. Obviously, it very much so depends on where you're at in your career. If you're in the beginning, if you are very established, you've been doing this for a decade, it probably looks a bit different. As someone who had only been doing it for 2 years before I jumped back into corporate, I definitely was working more than 40 hours a week. And that time is not just spent filming and editing. It's also, you are doing all of the outreach, you are doing all of the communications, you are doing all of the accounting, you are having to manage all the things that normally you would have a whole entire team for, because corporations and agencies, they have project managers, they have people managing the finances, they have people following up with the brands if they're not making the payments. So in actuality, a freelancer is probably working more hours than a 9-to-5er, and probably is working on the weekend, because I definitely worked on the weekend a lot. I actually rarely had a full weekend off, because sometimes I would be burnt out by Thursday and I'd be like, I don't want to do anything today, so let me just schedule it for the weekend. Or like, Like I have a, a couple hours gap here, or I can stay up late on Saturday because I'm not doing anything on Sunday. So you are more likely to work on the weekend as a freelancer. As a 9-to-5er, hopefully, God willing, if you're blessed, you have your weekends off consistently. You're able to close your laptop at 5 or 6 o'clock, Monday through Friday. And so you have that consistency that you can rely on. And then depending on where you're at in your freelance journey, you may need to hire some people. You may need to hire a financial planner. You may need to hire an assistant. You need someone to do your taxes because it's not as easy as just filing, and calling it a day. Like there's a lot. I think also depending on where you're at, you need to file quarterly instead of yearly. There's also the fact that you may need to be chasing down money. So the thing about corporate, or the benefits of corporate, is that you have consistent pay. You have easier, more cost-effective access to health insurance and a 401k. So there are things in the framework that are already set up for you that you don't have to do yourself. So again, it really depends on, do you want to deal with all of these things, or are you willing to deal with all of these things? Because also the sky is the limit when you're a freelancer. Like when it comes to income, you can book a gig for $5,000. You can book a gig for $1,000. You are not stuck to a set salary. You can also work corporate and do UGC on the side. Obviously you would need to speak to your company to confirm, what their limits are with that, whether or not, it's a conflict of interest. But that's definitely something a lot of people do. Or if you want to work in corporate, work your 9-to-5, and then create your content to build your online presence. Not even for the point of making money, but just to build your following so that you can get those bigger ticket deals without having to do UGC, and you can just be paid for your likeness. So it really depends on, again, back to the original point, it depends on you. It depends on your specific needs, your specific wants, what your goals are, what your personality is, what you can handle. There are skills that you definitely can develop. Like I've had to develop a lot of skills as a freelancer that I didn't have before, because it was like, if I don't develop these, like I'm not making any money this month. That's not to say that you can't be a type of person that you're not right now. Like if you're type B, that doesn't mean that you can't develop type A skills. It just is, do you want to? Do you want to develop these skills? Or if you are type A and you enjoy a corporate environment, then like, do you want to go into an environment where you have to do all of these extra things and take care of all these extra responsibilities? So there's pros and cons to both. Both can be amazing. Both can give you so much. I think also the stage you're at in your content creation journey as a career, or making it into a career, that really will determine or help you answer which one is more of a fit for you. Because if you're really established, this answer or this decision is going to be easier. If you're at the very beginning, working as a content creator at an agency or in a corporate job, a corporate setting might be better for you because there's a lot of learning opportunities. There's a lot of connections you can make. There's a lot of access you can get. And so if you're starting from scratch, working for a company might make more sense. And then maybe in a few years, you can then branch out to freelancing. However, if you already have your brand presence online and you want to jump into freelancing, that might make sense because you've already got 100K followers. So like you've got the resume. So yeah, I really hope this was helpful. As someone who has done both, neither one is perfect. They both have their pros and cons. I've definitely enjoyed both sides. Now that I'm back in corporate, I'm definitely enjoying it because I'm learning so much. I think there's only so much you can learn as a freelancer in terms of the way the industry is changing, the way the trends are changing, because things change so fast and develop so fast. So I have learned a lot. I have had to develop a lot of skills already in the short period that I've been back in corporate, and that's been really beneficial for me. And I also was very burnt out by freelancing. I'm not saying that in the future I won't go back to it, but for now, like this is what works for me, and I'm still freelancing on the side a little bit with brands and products that aren't conflicting with my day job. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Rate and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.